Still controversy out there on this Lions situation. We get at it with Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, on a Locked On Lions Tuesday, January 2nd into Wednesday, January 3rd on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Matt Derry with you. Still kind of rubbing some of the salt away from the wounds of last weekend. But, of course, the Minnesota Vikings are coming to town this Sunday. We'll get into that and much more with Nick Baumgardner from theathletic.com coming up in a second. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. That's it. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can follow me on Twitter at Derry Speaks. Nick is with us. He's at Nick Baumgardner on Twitter. Also the Matt Derry Facebook fan page. And thanks to all of you that subscribe and watch us on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. It's been a wild few days. Dan Campbell back on the radio this morning, talking again about what took place over the weekend. Nick, great to see you. Welcome in.
Thanks, man.
Great, crazy times here in Detroit with what's going on with the Lions. How would you kind of recap these last 72 hours or so?
Well, you know, the situation live, I think, pretty clear. The ref got confused, overwhelmed, and made the wrong decision, made the wrong call. I think what happened here, if you really distill it down, is this. The Lions use Matt Nelson, number 70, all the time as the jumbo tackle, right? The sixth offensive lineman who comes in, and sometimes he's tackle eligible. I think always tackle eligible, but sometimes he pulls across as a blocker. But he plays a lot, like 20 snaps a game. Even in this game, he does. And the plan of this whole play was to send multiple tackles to the ref to trick the defense into thinking that, like, oh, Nelson's in the game, so he's tackle eligible. That's the guy we got to worry about if somebody's going to leak out and catch a pass. And, of course, Decker's the one who goes and reports, and then they go up and they line up. And the official either hears Decker and then doesn't process it and then goes right back into the line of scrimmage and sees Nelson and then just goes automatically
Skipper. You mean Skipper.
Skipper, I'm sorry. I keep calling him Nelson. Skipper, not Nelson, whatever.
They're pretty similar guys.
Skipper. They're similar guys, yeah. Nelson used to do this. Skipper doesn't know. Right. Anyway, so 70's up there, and he just the ref goes through his mental check, and he thinks that 70, okay, 68 goes out, we got to throw the flag, and then he just refuses to accept the fact that he was wrong. And I think that, we've seen this enough times, Matt. I think over the years, the NFL media machine takes over by the next morning, and look, that's the line they're going to go with. They're not going to overturn anything or and for the broadcast, I think Aikman eventually maybe corrected it, but live in the moment, even they were kind of like, this is a 3-way foul. And I'm like, this is a no-way foul. I don't know what's going on, but They got jobbed. I mean, I don't know what else to say on that one. They really did.
And it's interesting. It comes out today, and I was on this morning that Brad Allen was going to get another assignment this weekend. He and his crew were going to work. Now it turns out they're going to be the first game of the weekend, Saturday in prime time at 4:30 for the Ravens and Steelers. It's just amazing. Wow. It's almost like the league is acting like this never happened. And they're giving them a pretty prime slot here in a game that has meaning for Pittsburgh in a big way.
It seems to be the MO all the time when they get caught like this. It's not the only time this has happened to this crew even. I mean, there was I think Schefter was pumping out stuff about the Bears game earlier this year, just recently. The Justin Fields, I think he got hit late in the game, wherever it was. This guy got fined and no call. And look, the Detroit Dallas game, there's a number of situations in that game that were poorly handled. And this is what they do. I remember the reason why they got rid of the pass interference replay was because every single one of them was upheld, and they were tired of all of us being like, you're never going to go back on your refs. And they're like, that's right. We never are. We're going to always trust what they say. Their word is law, and we're not going to dispute it. That's what they do. And I really don't know what the alternative is other than to have better refs and have better standards. I think that's probably what it is.
It's interesting. The NBA obviously has Detroit's own at least formerly, Detroit's own Joe Dumars sort of come out when there's a dean of discipline or there's something that goes on, whether it's Draymond Green or whomever.
Right. Yeah.
In this situation, like you said, I mean, you have an owner this weekend in David Tepper that's threw his drink at a fan outside of his suite window. Hasn't been a word about it. Brad Allen, like you said, has notoriously been bad this year, whether it's the Valdez-Scantling play, whether it's the Fields play, whether it's a Saturday night down at Jerry World. And there's not been a word from the league. And I think it sucks. I think it's terrible.
It does suck, yeah.
Some accountability would be nice. I mean, this guy messed up. Campbell's on the radio this morning on the ticket telling Jim Costa and Stoney the same types of things. This is what we went through. I brought him over in warmups. I showed him the play on a piece of paper.
Right.
It's incredible.
And the result of the accusation, I think that ultimately they landed on was the Lions were trying to, deceive and
deception and gamesmanship.
Gamesmanship. Okay, well, if that was the case, then you should have told him that pregame. You should have told him that before the game and said, Dan, you can't run that because X, Y, and Z. Can't do it. And he didn't. And so it's just like, the pool reporter even goes and asks him a number of very good questions and he ignores all of them. Just doesn't answer them. And it's like, okay, if that's going to happen, then there's really no accountability. Why are we even bothering pretending that there is? And yeah, that's unfortunate. And the unfortunate part is it could cost somebody a playoff game. It has cost people playoff games, not just the Lions, other teams in the past too. So that's just how it goes. That's part of football. It always used to be, hey, that's human error as part of the game. And to a degree, I can understand that. But I mean, I think we can do better, even with that.
Nick Baumgardner with us, theathletic.com, a lead NFL writer, does a lot for the draft as well, which I want to ask him about in a little bit. Although this is no longer draft season, SCN here in Detroit. We've got a playoff team to talk about. Last thing on this Brad Allen thing, what effect do you think it will have on the team when it comes to seeding? And certainly, you want to be the 2, you can't be the 1 now really anymore and all these things. But do you think it motivates them to then go, hey, bring it on, bring on Stafford in a few weeks, bring on Dallas again, or would you rather see them be the 2 and avoid some of these, pit stops?
Well, I think they would certainly rather have the 2 if all things can break. You want the best possible, situation for yourself. But I think really internally, I think that Dallas would be the one I'd really be saying to myself, give us them again for sure. Because they outplayed them. They outplayed them, and had the game won. And I think outplayed them for long, large stretches of that game. And I think, in an objective situation, all coaches on both sides would probably admit to that. And that's, that was what they were looking for going to Dallas, going to play a team that needed that game more than they did, frankly, and testing where they were at. And I mean, they were still a little shorthanded. They did not have Aleem in that game. They didn't have CJ Gardner-Johnson in that game, right? So there's some other guys that could be coming back as well. And they outplayed them and had the game won. And I think that to them, that says we can go with anybody in this league, especially in this conference. And let's see what happens. And I would say, in just knowing how that room is, and knowing Campbell's culture, I would think that you'll see a very motivated group, whatever's on the field this week. And then, be it Stafford or whomever, I think that now it's probably going to be a little angrier too at some point, which is good for a young group like this. I think those groups can rally around that. And
this is probably the head coach you want to have in a situation like this. How many times have we seen, people complain about the Anthony Hitchens play on Pettigrew in 14 and Caldwell stood there. He did nothing.
That's exactly right. That's what I thought about. Mm-hmm.
And so Dan Campbell's the guy you want to have, right?
Yeah. I mean, and that's you rarely see him get that animated, but he did. And, I can think back to even Patricia had a moment before it all went to hell. It was actually kind of the last moment that he had that people were still sort of on board with him. They go to Lambeau and got jobbed on a pass interference non-call at the end of the game. And he just would refuse to say anything about it. I think it was like Trey Flowers got called for a holding or something like this. Is what it was.
An illegal hands to the face.
Hands to the face. And it was just like, dude, you gotta stand up for your guys, or you're never. And he lost them right after that. He lost them. And you saw Dan right there running on the field. I mean, that was for them. I mean, that was certainly good to see. You don't want to see it in that situation, right? But yeah, he answered the way that you would expect so far from him.
Lions have made a move today with Isaiah Buggs. I want to talk about that with Nick coming up. Also, I want to ask him about just the NFC playoff picture and a little draft talk as well. It is a Tuesday edition of a Locked On Lions. All right, we're back here talking about our friends at FanDuel NFL regular season week 18. This is it. Last full weekend of all of the full slate in the card to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get that $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you just place a $5 bet at FanDuel. It's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. This app is so easy to use. It's really the best. There are many different ways to bet. You got live same game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab, and you make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays right there at FanDuel. There's much, much more too. Over-unders, you know that. Money line, everything at FanDuel. Go to the website, FanDuel.com/lockedon, and make your first bet a layup. Lions are about a 5.5-point favorite Sunday against the Vikings. Who knows who's going to start a quarterback? You want to put some money down the Lions? You can at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Nick Baumgardner is with us, great writer from theathletic.com, also co-author of the now famous book, Mountaintop, about the 97 Michigan Wolverines. Your co-author, Mark Snoop Snyder, is moving to Pasadena. He's been out there. It seems like
he's been out there for a month.
You're stuck here, Nick. He's out
Mark
there.
was in San Diego too, man. You know, he went up and down the coast. Is what
Did he really?
Oh, yeah.
What's up with that? I mean, come on. But
I saw him before he left. He said it was an aggressive schedule, but he was confident he was going to get through it. And I think he probably did. He's probably fine.
What does Mrs. Snyder have to say about all this?
She was going too. I think they were all going, so it was going to be a good time. But I think that they got, it was good. It's been good. It's been good to see the response from everybody on Twitter for sure.
Now here, the book is about the 97 team. The 2023 team is one win away from, is that going to help or hurt sales? What do you think?
Everyone tells us that that'll help. Like Scott Hirth, our buddy at the MDen, who was actually at the 97 game when the MDen was just like in its infancy, told us a great story in the book about how after that game, they made like a year or two of sales in like a month after they won the national title, because everything. So everybody says they win the title, all merch goes up. So we'll hope, right? That's Mark and I's hope anyway, that works out.
Well, check out wherever you get your books of Mountaintop with Mark Snyder and Nick co-authoring.
Michigan1997book.com. That'll set you up.
There you go. Even better. All right, tell me about your thoughts. So Isaiah Buggs tweets out today he's gone. This has been a bizarre year for him because last year he came on strong. He played well. Everybody's got to re-sign him. No shows at minicamp, in and out of the lineup, and now tweets out today that he's out. Obviously, Lee McNeil's coming back, so they needed a roster spot. But how stunned are you that they cut Buggs today?
Not stunned because they need the roster spot. I think it was probably a hard one for them because. Look, he's an emotional guy, number one. And, the not showing for minicamp, I think maybe was one of those, I think he feels he's a guy who's earned it. He was one of the originals, I think, in some ways that they talk about. He wasn't a draft pick. But Isaiah Buggs was the guy that came in that very first year when they were really searching for anybody that could do anything and help them stay positive and help their culture move along and really help protect it, I think, for their first two seasons. And I think he's probably bummed that they've gotten better. Their talent level's raised up. He's an older player now. He's a one down, defensive tackle. Aleem obviously is Aleem. It's a different situation. And, going up and down like that for some guys, I think we just talked about Skipper. He's done that for years, and he does. He's talked about how he gets frustrated with it, but it's part of the job. It is what it is. Some guys get frustrated with it. And they don't want to do it. And maybe that's Buggs' deal where it's like, hey, we're going to waive you. We're going to bring you right back and put you on the squad or whatever and move on. Maybe he says, I don't want to do that. I want to move forward or whatever. And that happens too. But I wasn't surprised by it because he's a guy that they sort of use when they need him. And I don't know if he wants that to be his role, but I feel like that kind of needs to be his role at this point in his career. And I'm not sure if he totally is there yet mentally, which, that happens with veterans sometimes.
It's interesting because like we said, he really played well last year. And
I think he's played well too, Matt, in the spurts that they've used him this year. It's just not a lot, right? It's been very rare. Yeah.
No. And that's a position of need. I'm going to ask you about cornerbacks in a minute here, and that's an obvious spot the Lions are going to be looking at in the draft, but they also need somebody to put next to Aleem McNeil. Benito Jones has been fine. They've tried just about everything. But Buggs on kind of not a random Tuesday, but just sort of tweets out, hey, I'm going. 96 out.
Well, that sounds about right with him. He's a pretty up and down dude. So, we'll see how that all. I think they would probably like to have him back, but if he wants to move forward, that's we'll see.
So when you look at the defense in its entirety here, getting McNeil back now, Campbell saying this morning they want to get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back, and both of them maybe could play on Sunday. What does that do to the defense in your mind?
Well, Aleem is a huge thing. McNeil is, if he's back to somewhat, close to as healthy as you can possibly ask for of him at this point, he's clearly the best interior tackle they have. The fact that they have been fitting the run a little bit better, I think that Melifonwu playing up in the box and being more confident has helped. They've limited some of those gashes, but when you bring, McNeil back in, that really helps so much on first down, especially against those quarterbacks that are mobile when they don't have somewhere to go up the middle. And he's a guy who can get off the block and go agile and play a lot of snaps too. And I think that if he's healthy-ish, that's a huge, huge benefit. And then CJ is, I don't know what he's going to be able to do. I really don't. I'm still a little surprised that he's ready right now. Quite frankly, I am and I'm not. Knowing his personality, nothing's surprising in that sense. But I think just from a confidence standpoint, it probably helps those guys in the back end because they're so young and they need it badly. And that was the thing that I think Aaron Glenn, if you talk to him in an honest moment, and he's not going to make this excuse in front of anybody, I'm going to put young players out there, and I'm going to put guys like Gardner-Johnson next to him so that their confidence stays when they make a rough play. And He hasn't been able to do that this year. And I do wonder if having CJ back in there a little bit, whether it's on the field or on the sideline, if that helps with that, if nothing else. And if they get that and nothing else, then that's a win right there in my book.
It's interesting where you would put him, though, because Branch has to be on the field, Sutton has to be on the field, Joseph has to be on the field. And now Melifonwu out of nowhere. I mean, the last few weeks has become, I'm not going to say a star, but he's had a really good run. So it's almost like, all right, you got to give Gardner-Johnson his due and get him out there. But where do you put him?
I don't know. It'd probably be after a rotation situation or something. You give guys a break. I mean, they have been rotating the corners a little bit. If he has played in the box more, I think that as a linebacker, I think his future is one of these guys that is more of a space player who plays up near the box and can pressure and blitz. And part of me wonders, look, was that the plan at the beginning of the season? Can you get a guy like Melifonwu along to where maybe you take someone else off the field? And, now we've got athletes, two guys like that can run around. They can both play the run. They can both blitz if you wanted to, and they both cover anybody. And to me, when you're playing athletic teams, playing a guy like Stafford, I would want as many coverage players that can tackle as possible on the field. And so just having him back, I think, as an option is a big deal. Where does he go? I don't know. And who takes the cost of that? I guess we'll see. But somewhere, probably, yeah.
That was my next question, Nick. You're looking at it going, all right, let's say Dallas, wins. They're the 2, Lions are the 3. Let's say they get Rams first, Cowboys next. You're talking about 2 passing attacks that have been feared all year. Yeah. And Kendall Vildor is getting 80% of the snaps out there. He was on the street 3 weeks ago.
Well, the guy, was Vildor the one on the CD Lamb? Was he the one that was? Yeah. I mean, and God love him, man. He's staying in it, but he stumbles and then he just dives, and you're like, dude, just tackle him, just tackle him or something, right? And those are the plays, yeah. And it's those are the plays that just they cannot happen. So at some point, you're hoping, I think, if you're Detroit, that CJ is back to some sort of functional capability, and that, hey, even if you have to say, Brian Branch, you got to go out and play some outside corner a little bit, or CJ, you have to. They'll do that, I think. As long as you get the best 5 DBs on the field and get 5 guys out there that aren't going to give up something like that. And I think that that's all you can ask for right now. I really like how Aaron Glenn has finally, and it takes him a long time every year to do this, but it's stop all the other stuff, peel back, play off, mix up your looks a little bit and just keep guys confident. And when they play like that, they're actually not bad. They're a middle of the road defense. They get the most out of their guys. And, you saw what you saw the other day. I mean, they can hang in, but it's you can't have busts like that.
What kind of letter grade would you give Jack Campbell right now?
That's a tough one. I think he's been moved around a lot. So I think when they've asked him to be an edge, when they've asked him to line up on the line, it'd be a C or lower. But I think when they've left him alone and just left him in the middle, it's been a B or higher. And I think that that's pretty good for a first-year linebacker. It's been weird because 2 things have happened. They've moved him around, and then the year started, and Barnes had played so well and jumped him. And then Barnes fell apart in the middle of the year. And then Anzalone has had like a resurgence year, and he just can't take him off the field. And so Campbell's role has been a little bit all over the place. And I think that I'm curious to see, because the last few weeks they've left him alone and he's played in the middle, and that's kind of been it. And I feel like it's been better. And I'm curious to see if that's what we see going forward. If I would stop moving him around and I would start moving Derek Barnes around and be like, you have to now keep your, you have to find a spot. He has a spot. We're going to work with him. And that's how I would maybe go forward with that. Because I feel like Campbell needs to be a little bit more left alone, but I guess we'll see how it goes.
Nick is a guy that grinds tape. He loves watching some college games. I want to ask him about the draft. Yes, let's do that coming up next as well, right here on a Tuesday, Locked On Lions. But first, let's talk about PrizePicks. Daily fantasy made so much fun. It's the top DFS platform out there. Easiest and most exciting way to play DFS is at PrizePicks. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. I said it earlier, week 18, now's your chance to get in on all the games and pick the players at PrizePicks. Justin Jefferson is coming to town, folks, this weekend. You're going to take him to go less than 100 receiving yards. Maybe you go with Travis Kelce for the Chiefs game, more than 75 receiving yards. You can do rushing yards with any of the backs, quarterbacks in any game. All of these, now that fantasy football is done, you want to do a little daily fantasy, do it at PrizePicks. They offer a reboot policy, too, that's your entry stay in play, even if one of your guys gets injured. Nobody else has a platform with an injury insurance policy. PrizePicks does. Go to their website, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Daily fantasy sports made easy with PrizePicks. Nick Baumgardner with us from theathletic.com. Please subscribe to them. It's nothing. It's like, what is it, Nick? What do they say?
Cup of coffee a week or whatever it is.
Cup of coffee a week. Get on there and read his stuff. I always read Nick. Big Zach Meisel fan and many others at The Athletic. Our friend Mike Sando as well. His NFL stuff's always on point. And Colton Pouncey, of course, as well.
That's right, yeah.
All right, yes, Colton covers the Lions, does a great job. All right, tell me about, so I'm thinking cornerback for the Lions, and who knows what number it's going to be. Hopefully it's going to be late 20s and everything else with their first-round pick. But as you look at this roster now, do you agree with me? And who would be out there for Detroit?
Yeah, I think corner, I would look at edge as well, because I think that if you look at both those spots, obviously, like those are the two that stand out. I think it's going to be interesting. I was just looking at it today. Corner, as a kid in Toledo, Quinyon Mitchell, who not many people know much about, who I think he's going to end up with a first-round grade from more teams than probably not. And I'm curious. I think the Lions are going to really like him. He's got really good length. He's really, really fast. Really, really explosive, really, really good kid, and a quality, young guy who he's the Zay Flowers, right? Where half the SEC offered to buy him, this year, and he said, no, I'm going to stick with Jason Candle and Toledo. It's that's a guy that I look at for teams like Baltimore or Detroit down at the bottom there that have that type of tough culture, underdog type guy who's going to prove it. I like him a lot. And then the edge guys in that range, it's interesting. I think JT Tuiamolo from Ohio State, Braswell from Alabama would be another one there. Those are the two that are probably off the top. I'm trying to think. Josh Newton would be another corner from TCU. But the other thing too is I almost wonder if they could move around a little bit with this pick too. I don't know. I think that there's so many teams that are going to need quarterbacks, and to see where these, where everybody falls, how it all goes. I know everybody likes to pick on every little thing that McCarthy ends up doing, and fair enough. I could make 1,000 cases for him to go back to school, but every time I look at the board, it's like he's going to go in the first round. There's too many teams that need a quarterback. So I do look at that too for Detroit and say they've moved before up. I wouldn't be surprised if they, maybe look at that and say, now we really have an advantage to take it. We're not going to take a guy if we don't love him, because I like JT Tuiamolo too. But could you do better later if you think so? That's a situation I've looked at a little bit lately too for them.
It's interesting with this Jonah Jackson situation. Now the Lions, I think, would be drafting their new left guard right away.
Right,
yeah, possible. But Jonah, there's games you watch him and you go, man, free agent, he's going to get the bag, And
Right.
then even the other night, there were some spots he missed. He's
Mhm.
not having maybe the great Jonah Jackson year, but again, this offensive line, you know, Brad Holmes has made it a priority over the past few years.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I've been all aboard I think you got to re-sign him. I think he's so important to what they do, and it has been. You're right. I mean, the injuries are concerning, and I do wonder if that impacts his market too. I don't know. I don't know what the market would say about Jonah because, man, I think that's a great point. Like he has played next to Ragnow his whole career, and he's played on the line with Sewell for most of his career. That's not nothing. You know what I mean? You get to play next to, generational talents. Sewell and Frank's not far behind in that case. So I think that impacts maybe some of it. Maybe that would drive the price down. I don't know. I would think that this team, though, if you talk to Campbell or Fraley or those guys, they would absolutely, I mean, they know the value of him because, I mean, their run game and their protection, but I think their run game just isn't the same when he's not in there. And I know that he's been up and down this year, and he's been up and down, I think, with injuries and health in his whole career. And that's why it's hard to pay a guard, especially a guard like Jonah, because he's not an awesome athlete. He's a fighter who doesn't get bullied much, and he's really, really tough in that center guard gap area. But I don't know what the price will be. And, man, you'd hate to lose a guy like that, especially because you don't really have a plan. You got some young guys, but you're not really ready to replace a guy at his level. So I would pay him. And I know that's tough, but I would try to get that done as best I could.
I know I'm going to post this video on YouTube, and I can guarantee two of the first 10 commenters will say, "Oh, what about Mikey Sanders still to the Lions?"
There you go.
It always happens. Always happens.
Hey, that could though. I mean, like he's another guy. Michigan's got a ton of guys that I think would fit what they want to do now. You know what I mean? Like Sanders still is a guy he'll go a lot higher than people realize. I think he's a guy who'll be done on Friday. I think he's a day 2, top 100 prospect, just of how tough he is.
Amazing.
But
Amazing
some tough players on that team.
Nick, great to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for coming on today.
You bet, man. Anytime.
Nick Baumgardner with us from theathletic.com and Mountaintop. Check out the book. What's the website again? You got me.
Michigan1997book.com or on Amazon. Just find it on there.
There you go. But check out Nick at theathletic.com. We got the crossover on Thursday with Luke Braun, of course, host of a Locked On Vikings. Stick with us right here on Locked On Lions, your team every day.